So what's going on guys, Kate's here and welcome back to a brand new video. For today I will show you the best and most fun Necromancer build in Diablo 4. So at the start I will explain how to play this class, then we will look into the best skills, paragon setup, what gems and gear to use, so you would get the highest damage possible and much more. So if this sounds interesting to you, then let's get right into it. So Necromancer in the endgame has insane single target and AoE damage and crowd control abilities, as well as summons that lets him do a bunch of damage or become a support player. This class is basically really good at almost all roles. And then on top of everything else, corpses provide a unique resource to the Necromancer that is unavailable to any other class, which will offer a powerful and challenging resource that you can manage to achieve super high damage and much more. This build guide is split into two parts. The first part is a bone spear leveling build, so to go from level 1 to 50. And then the second part is the full endgame build, which requires at least level 50. And if at any point I go too fast when explaining, or you just need more time to copy the build, then feel free to check out the links in the description to find the build website. So with that said, let's move over to the leveling build. So to start off, from getting to level 3, we have to put 2 points into these two nodes. Then from level 4 to 7 we spend 4 more points in here. Then from level 8 to 14 we will get 8 points, which we wanna use by getting all of these nodes. Then from level 15 to 21 we will get 7 points, which we should spend by unlocking and upgrading all of these nodes. Then from level 22 to 35 we will get 14 more points that we should spend in this order. And then lastly from level 36 to 50 we will get 14 skill points, which we should spend on these specific nodes. And by the way, if I went too fast, then you can easily check out this video's description where you can see this build on a website. And then finally, don't forget about your renown, which after you gather all the renown in the game, you will get 10 extra skill points. I recommend to spend them towards your leveling progression. And then in the endgame build, I will show you where you spend your 10 leftover skill points. So then as far as leveling goes, leveling up in Diablo 4 is similar to most other MMOs, so for the most part this will mean that you have to constantly replace one rare item with a better one, all the way up to level 50. So the Bone Spear Necromancer specializes in constant critical strikes, and that's why we will want to ignore all the other weapons except the two-handed sword, because they are the only weapons that will give us implicit critical strike damage. So the top 5 most important stats are core skill damage, vulnerable damage, critical strike damage with bone skills, and damage to distant enemies. Then as far as armor goes, different pieces will typically grant us defensive and utility stats, except the gloves, which will offer us multitude of offensive options. So for the helmet we want to get the intelligence, maximum life and resistance. Then for the chest armor, focus on maximum life, total armor and damage reduction. Then for gloves get bone spear ranks, critical strike chance, attack speed, damage and intelligence. Then for pants we wanna get the maximum life, intelligence and damage reduction. Then for boots we get movement speed, corpse, tendril ranks, fortified generation and movement speed on evade. And then lastly for our jewelry, specifically for the amulet, get damage, all stats, bone spear skill ranks, damage reduction and critical strike chance. And finally for both rings, get the vulnerable damage, critical strike chance, critical strike damage and physical damage. And then on top of all of this, don't forget to not upgrade armor or jewelry while leveling. I only recommend to socket armor with rubies, jewelry with skulls, weapons with the emeralds, and save the rest of your upgrades for your level 50 build. And for your specialization upgrades, select the skeletal warriors category and upgrade skirmishes to sacrifice. Then for the skeletal mages, select cold and upgrade till sacrifice. And finally in the golem section, select iron and upgrade sacrifice. So then in my final summary for your leveling build, the Bone Spear Necromancer specializes in a single target damage, and he can destroy very powerful enemies when their back is against the wall. For this build, our gear is very important for the highest damage possible, so we want to equip the resource aspect of the Torment, resource aspect of the Umbral, and splittering offensive aspect. And then lastly, keep your essence high, so that the Sorrotation and Ossified Essence will give us crazy amount of stacks, and that's about it. So now let's move over to the second part where I will show you how your endgame Necromancer build will look like. So first of all, for your skills, we want to use the Bone Spear, Bone Storm, Corpse Explosion, Corpse Tendrils, Bone Prison and Blood Mist. And as for your gear, we already discussed what stats to look out for, but if you're looking for purely best of the best, then here it is. So we want to get the Deathless Visage Helmet. and socket in the ruby gem. Then for the chest armor, get the bone wave armor of the disobedience, and socket in 2 more ruby gems. Then for gloves, we go with the bone wave gauntlets of the grasping veins. Then for the pants, get the temerity, and socket in 2 more ruby gems. Then for boots, get the penitent greaves. Then for the amulet, go with the melted heart of the Selig. Then for the first ring, get the ring of the umbral. And then for the second one, get the band of the exposed flesh. And finally, for your weapon, we only want to get the splintering 2-handed sword. And then for your specialization upgrades, select the skeletal warriors category and upgrade skirmishes to sacrifice. Then for the skeletal mages, select the cold and upgrade till sacrifice. And finally, in golems category, select iron and upgrade sacrifice. Then with that said, let's move forwards, and this is how your skill tree will look like. And if you need more time to copy all of this, then check out the build link in the description. If you just came from the leveling build, then this is very similar. So again, just copy these exact upgrades, and don't forget that by gathering all the renown in the game, you will get 10 extra skill points. And then finally, we have the paragon system. At first, it might seem overwhelming, but if you're like me, who's played all the previous Diablo games, then this is quite self-explanatory. So starting off, this is how your first 26 points should be spent. So we use the starting board, and for our glyph, select the blood drinker. Then afterwards, this is how it should look like at around 62 points. So we select the bone graved board and put in the sacrificial glyph. Then this is how it should look like at around 120 points. So we select the scent of the dead board and put in the essence glyph. And then lastly, this is our final goal at around 200 points. So we select the flesh eater board and put in the control. So then in my final summary, the penitent greaves is the necromancer's most important item because it gives us incredible movement speed and it will help us solve the essence problem by triggering the resource aspect of the umbral, so this is very important to get as early as possible. Then as for your gameplay loop, zoning enemies out is very important because this build doesn't have almost any movement skills. So keep using the bone prison and corpse tendrils because these skills will keep enemies locked up and stunned. And then finally, the best skill rotation is to use the bone spear on at least one enemy to create a corpse, then activate corpse tendrils and then use the bone prison to group up and lock enemies. Then from here spam the bone spear, then again corpse tendrils, then corpse explosion, and then finally use the blood mist that is more of a defensive skill that will help us remove CC if we ever get stuck. And then from here we repeat the same rotation, and that's about it.